And this is Tuesday, day 3 of the 100th Weiner Wellness Week, the centennial version of the Weiner Wellness Week. Can you believe it?
Century.
Can you believe it? I'm here with the GOAT, the one and only Mike Gallagher, Mikey G. I'm Joe Messino. And folks, we've got, a real interesting topic for you here today because, we talk a lot about gut health and we talk a lot about hormonal health. But is there a connection between the two? And we have our friend and colleague, Dr. Len Bransowitz, to thank for initiating this topic and presenting it at one of our professional training events. And I was there with him when he presented this the first time, when I helped with some of the product. But man, Len was the star. And we wanted to bring some of this information to you today because this is pretty much breaking news, Mike.
This is. Being in the industry for almost 30 years, I haven't heard of this before he presented it recently, right? So a lot of our practitioners aren't even aware of this connection unless they were able to make that event there. So now we know everything's related to the gut, so it makes sense, and you can rationalize on that. But now we have the research is finally catching up, right? So we're really excited to share this. We want to give a little background. Again, some of this does get a little technical, but we're trying to at least explain it, and we'll try to simplify it as well at the same time. But all the aspects of the hormones. So again, our point has always been, yes, you can focus, and we have some great hormone formulas like Thyroid Complete and Iodine Plus through the years. But if you're not looking at the gut, the GI, the dysbiosis, even if you're not presenting with any specific GI issues, how it can affect the hormones.
Right.
So it's a really interesting and fascinating way of looking at this, that this could be the missing piece of the puzzle for a lot of people out there.
And one of the biggest parts that we'll get to in here is the connection between a gut dysbiosis and the levels of estrogen and testosterone and how it affects that. So even if you are doing some sort of HRT, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, if the gut is not addressed, you're not going to get maximum benefit.
Wow.
It may even be detrimental.
Wow. And again, a lot of doctors, even in our world, are not looking at this. So this is really exciting, Joe. So we're happy to present this now. So there's the presenters. There's Dr. Lenz,
See?
all
wasn't
the
lying.
letters, right?
I was there with him.
Call him the alphabet man. So we've known Dr. Len for a long time, of course, right? Yeah. He's a pharmacist for many years, went to Duquesne University, one of the most prestigious pharmaceutical pharma schools out there. Yes. But then he became a clinical nutritionist and a naturopath, right? So he's helped so many people. So we want to thank him for this presentation.
We were kind of kidding a little bit about it, that we're resurrecting the Len and Joe show.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Len was on the radio in Pittsburgh here for years and years and years. One of the pioneers.
That's right. Exactly. So let's start with a few little
Len, I said, Len, what are we doing? He goes, well, we got to start off with a couple of
cartoons.
Jokes. Yeah.
All right. So go ahead, Joe.
The pills put a stop to your hot flashes, Mrs. Bates, but maybe we should reduce the dosage. Well, see, this is one of the issues, right? It went from one extreme to the other. A lot of times when you just address a symptom, you can go from extreme to extreme and not really get to the heart or cause of the problem. That's what they're trying to say.
The side effects.
Right.
And Miss Frosty, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the old HR thing.
Yeah.
Right? HRT thing, hormone replacement therapy. So, of course, hormone replacement therapy will make you feel much better. I'm replacing your hormones with rainbow, sunshine, and glitter. Right?
Doesn't work that way.
No, unfortunately, it doesn't.
So, this is one of the things that, people, I think a big misconception is when you say hormone, people think estrogen, testosterone, maybe progesterone, but these are key hormones: insulin, leptin, ghrelin, the thyroid hormone. These are all working synergistically. Hormones don't work independent of each other. And we really need to address all the hormone activity in the body, not just the two main ones that people think about.
And then here's another little cartoon. Just when I thought menopause couldn't get any worse, my husband shaves off his mustache. Now I'm the only one in the house with one. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, with an imbalance of estrogen and testosterone in the body, and many times if they do HRT and it's not well monitored or there's not an accompanying protocol, then these types of adverse effects can happen. So,
Yeah. And I always think, Joe, you know, see kind of like the irony in life. Men they age, they lose their testosterone, start developing estrogen called andropause, and women just the opposite. They start turning into men. Men start turning into women. Interesting.
You know, Dr. Bob was actually talking about that yesterday, and the big the hormone imbalance that's going on. And he said that we are systematically taking men out of the equation with all of the estrogens in the environment and the food. And that's a very big point. If you remember, Mike, years ago, I had a workshop topic that was called, right, what would I call it?
Invasion of the man boobs?
Invasion of the man boobs. Yes. That was the one. Yeah.
Invasion of the body snatchers.
The man boobs. But it can happen.
But that's serious, Joe, because it is if you look at all the different cancers out there, the fastest growing, unfortunately, is male breast cancer.
Yes.
So it is a legit, real problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys aren't even aware of it, you know? So again, but we're talking about it today, you know, so this talk can be, of course, everybody, men and women. Okay. So here's the science. And of course, Dr. Len has all the references here, folks. These are all published medical journals, ranging there from, again, microbiology to journal Nature, right? So it goes on and on. But again, we're not just pulling this out of thin air. There's legitimate research on the gut-brain link here.
No, you have a lot of really prestigious organizations and companies here that are doing this in journals. So this is all backed by science. So, you know, the discussion is hormone relationships, human physiology. We understand that hormones this is a lifetime experience, right? It's not hormones are not an issue just when you get to a certain age. They affect your life from birth to death, from cradle to the grave. And I think that's one of the big problems, that people don't address hormonal health until they feel the symptoms. And usually things have been going on long before that, before you see the symptoms take place.
Right. So the sooner we can catch it, the earlier we can help. Prevention is always the best medicine, right? So don't wait till it gets too bad. Now, again, we can help you if it is too bad, but let's see those early signs.
Right.
Right. So
and even Dr. Bob yesterday talked about the cholesterol myth that goes on in this country. And, you know, we'll address that as well, because cholesterol is a hormone. It's a vital hormone needed by your body for hundreds of metabolic processes. So it's not the enemy, folks. And that's the problem.
Okay, so the facts, right? So the gut microbiome regulates or impacts nearly every hormone in your body. Okay, very interesting. Of course, the biggies, thyroid, sex hormones, even melatonin, right? So affects your sleep. And we were just talking about that the other day, right? And again, we need to look at the ways we can, you know, what's going on in the gut, what can we do nutritionally and lifestyle to support it. And there is testing, all different types of testing out there, and we can help you and guide you. And of course, Jeff Nisnik here can do testing, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Phil does testing.
You know, the thing that I like about this slide, for the very first point there, the gut microbiome regulates or impacts nearly every hormone in your body. You know, the word microbiome has been popular lately, right?
Yep.
You know, we know now the gut-brain connection, right? We know the microbiome is important for the immune system. We know it's important for good brain health because of the connection with the vagus nerve. But this takes it to a whole nother level. It regulates and impacts every hormone in the body. I don't think that statement has ever really been presented.
No, not on that level. So that's again, this is really breaking news, folks. So keep that in mind. Joe, want to take this one?
Sure. Now, the microbiome and the endocrine system. We've talked about the endocrine system a long time now. And remember, the endocrine system, folks, it's not an organ. Okay, people think, oh, the thyroid's off. Oh, my adrenals are off. Well, they're part of a system, and that system includes the pituitary and the hypothalamus, the thyroid and the adrenals. So when we're looking at this, we can't look at it in terms of, dissecting the body. We got to look at it in terms of the whole endocrine system.
Right.
And the endocrine system is really where all hormones are made and how they're regulated and how they're monitored. Okay, it's like the conductor in an orchestra. The whole endocrine system, and you have the pituitary plays a part, the hypothalamus, where some of the hormones are made, the adrenals where some of the hormones are made, and then the thyroid, of course. So these have to work in a concentrated effort together, not systematically dissected.
A delicate balance, right?
Absolutely.
And I know you call that whole axis the fat.
It's
the real fat axis.
Yes, PHAT, fat.
Right.
Yes.
So again, that's what we're trying to do. The whole everything in proper balance. All right. So hormones, right? What are they?
Messengers.
The messenger signals, right? They're produced in the endocrine system. Every cell in the body has them. Again, affects every single system in our body, from body temperature to brain to blood sugar and on and on. Can't function without it. The hypothalamus, though, has been thought it's the soul until now recently. Suggested gut.
Here comes the big reveal, right? Maybe. Yeah. So before we get to that, though, let's talk about cholesterol a little bit, because cholesterol has been called the mother hormone, because all hormones pretty much are made from cholesterol. So right off the bat, with that statement, Mike, you can see how much of a problem we have in this country with people taking cholesterol lowering drugs. Automatically, you are lowering hormone production.
That's right.
Automatically. And if you have 25 or 30% of the male population in this country, maybe it's higher now, taking statin drugs, and is it any wonder that we have a testosterone problem? Because without cholesterol, you can't make testosterone. So there is always a why. There is always a hierarchy and a chain reaction. And it all starts with cholesterol. Every cell in the body.
Yeah, and the other point with that is also your brain needs the cholesterol. Your brain, majority of it is fat, good fat. And if we're lowering it there, what are they seeing now? Increased risk of dementia, of Alzheimer's. And there's the blood sugar as well. They're saying if you're on a statin now, the chance of you getting diabetes is significant. It's actually on the warning label now of statins. Within 10 years, it can actually trigger and cause.
I mean, look at the causes of death that are still 1, 2, and 3 in the country. You have still heart disease, you have cancer, you have a stroke, and then of course you have dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, right? All of these top conditions are all affected by cholesterol. Every single one of them. Heart health, right at the top of the list. We know now cholesterol is not a marker for heart disease. There's so many other things we need to look at. But as you lower it and you stop the production of it, you stop the production of the number one nutrient for the heart, coenzyme Q10. So there's always a connection, and it starts with cholesterol.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I think we have one more slide on that, right? As we talked about, produces
every cell membrane, right?
Helps the production of testosterone, of course, vitamin D.
Oh, do we have a deficiency in vitamin D?
Oh, we think we do.
I wonder why. Because we stopped producing cholesterol. Folks, you cannot synthesize the sun's rays into vitamin D without cholesterol. So there you have it. You have a deficiency of D. You have a deficiency of testosterone. Where does it go back to? The source, cholesterol.
Right. So again, the connection with digestion fats, produces the biofats, helps us digest the fat itself, and the brain, right? So I know you all always have a saying, it's not the cholesterol that's bad, it's the oxidized cholesterol that's really bad.
Right.
And if we are focusing on the blood work, I know a lot of functional medicine doctors I work with, they focus on the HDL. More specific, it should be above 60 or higher if we're looking at lab tests. Again, that is not the allopathic model, that is functional medicine, right? So that's the good, quote unquote, good part of it. But we can even break it down even more specific into even more aspects, right? Of cholesterol.
But you got to remember that HDL and LDL are not actually cholesterol. They are transport mechanisms. They are fat proteins. Okay. Lipoprotein, high density lipo is fat protein. So you have fat proteins that transport cholesterol, one from the liver into the body to do its job, the other back to the liver to be excreted.
Right. And if we're getting super technical, one's called lipo A and one is called lipo B.
That's right.
And those are much more accurate markers for heart disease. It's right on the same panel. It's just doctors don't test for that unless you request it.
Yeah.
So if you are going to get a blood work through an allopathic medical model, those are the things that we would look at. But keep in mind, folks, this is just one piece, one part of the whole
as we said,
program.
Dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's on the rise too, because the brain requires cholesterol for neurological function.
That's right. So here we have the whole steroid hormone cascade. So the biochemistry of it, Joe, do you want to take this one? Basically, we start at the top.
Yep. Look what's at the top. Just like we said, top left, you have cholesterol, folks, then pregnenolone, progesterone. And then from there, everything starts to break down. But, it's really, even DHEA, at one point, DHEA was thought of as the mother hormone. Okay. And maybe it is in regard to the sex hormones, right? With testosterone, estradiol, estrone, androstenedione. These are all the sex hormones. And yes, it all starts with DHEA. But prior to that, it starts with cholesterol and pregnenolone. And that's what I think one of the missing pieces of the puzzle is. And look at the bottom here, Mike, cortisol, right? I mean, we know how important cortisol is as far as hormone production. And we also know that cortisol levels, when elevated, will adversely affect testosterone in the body as well.
Right. And we know your adrenals, your glands, is where your sex hormones are made.
Right.
And if you have elevated cortisol, usually affects your stress, right? Your people are stressed out. So that's classic adrenal fatigue. Affects your sleep. You're tired all day, and then you're having trouble sleeping at night because you can't, right? And then there's some accounts of mine that focus on the pregnenolone.
Yes.
All right. And especially they do a lot of hormone therapies and things like that. So technically the pregnenolone, from a supplement standpoint, is the mother hormone, but then it does the conversions, right? So many people focus on the bottom. We want to focus on the top.
Yeah.
And then work our way down. If we work
and
on the
you know
good
what,
stuff.
Mike, as you said, these hormones are made in the adrenals. So one of the big misconceptions out there is if a woman has a hysterectomy, she doesn't make hormones anymore. That's not true. Yes, there's a decline, but you're still making them. You can't live. As we saw in one of those previous slides, you cannot live without your hormones.
Right. So what happens when we lower the cholesterol, Joe? Everything.
The whole cascade goes down.
Gets affected. Right.
That's how important cholesterol is.
Yep. Okay, so let's focus on the estrogen side of it. So there's 3 different subcomponents of it, E1, 2, and 3, right? In females, of course, extremely important, develops both and maintains reproductive and female characteristics, of course, but it also is great for the brain, for the bones, for the heart, and for every bodily process.
I think it's very important for people to know that there's no good and bad hormones.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, for men, estrogen's a bad hormone. No.
There's an imbalance.
It's the imbalance that's bad.
2, 4, and 16.
Your body doesn't make anything. Like Tracy, Dr. Tracy, she'll be here Saturday. She always says the body does nothing wrong.
That's right.
It makes these for a reason.
That's right. All right. So again, breaking it down. So we have at the top there, the ovaries, the adrenals, the fat tissue, other organs, breaks down into the estrogens, it gets into the blood. Again, some of it goes into the kidneys, some of it goes into the liver. We keep going down, but what do we have at the bottom there, Joe?
Okay, so what we're seeing here now is with an imbalance in the microbiome, you don't get the proper excretion of the conjugated estrogens. What does that mean? Well, if you're not excreting them, they're still in your system and they will still disrupt that balance. So if you're on an HRT program and the gut, the biome, the microbiome is imbalanced, or it's a dysbiosis in the gut, you're really just doing it all for nothing. Because the conjugated estrogens are not excreted, and they
Mhm.
have to be. And the only way they are is through good health in the microbiome. So that's why
Right.
it's called the estrobolome. This is new breaking news, folks. This is something that Dr. Len brought to the table just a couple of months ago. And it's something that we have really never talked about before.
Right.
So when we talk about breaking news, this is at the top of the list. You
Right.
can excrete estrogens through urine as well. So if the kidneys are not functioning properly, we see that a lot, right? We see a lot of people come in looking for help with kidney function. Well, they're going to also have hormonal imbalance issues as well. So
Right.
between the kidneys and the bowel, if you're not in a good microbiome health, you're not going to have good hormonal balance.
And Joe, think about where majority of our accounts start with the naturopaths, of course, for centuries, always started gut first, right?
Yes.
And more functional medicine
Mhm.
doctors, they focus on the gut first. If you're not, just from an absorption standpoint and elimination standpoint, but now we're taking it one step further with clearing out the bad estrogens
Right.
from the gut, from the kidneys, from the liver, right? So again, you can never go wrong starting with the GI program first.
Right. And we talk about our new product, right? The product, the ingredient of the year, IgG, right? What does it do? It clears out bacteria. And as you can see from the bottom of this slide, when that bacteria is high, then you have reabsorption of deconjugated estrogens. That's where all the problem starts, folks, because that goes against the body's natural process. You want those estrogens excreted. If the bacteria in the gut is low, you'll have that. If the bacteria in the gut is high, you won't. And there's where the problem starts. So this brings a whole new chapter and a whole new use for IgG.
Yeah. Absolutely. And GI complete.
And GI complete, right?
Yeah.
And that's Len's number one protocol, Dr. Len. Right?
The gut guy.
The gut guy.
That's right. All right. So more info on the estrogens, again, primarily made in the tissues of the ovaries and the adrenals, as we said. Helps with regulate body fat, reproduction, heart, bone, brain, and again, important for men too as well, right? For libido,
Definitely.
sperm. So
absolutely.
it's
And
important.
there's the big misconception that estrogen is bad for men.
Right.
No, it's an imbalance.
Right.
With estrogen and testosterone and pregnenolone. That is the problem. There's a little bit more about estrogen. We know how important it is, but the bottom one, you need good gut health for all of that to happen. Before this, folks, we were not treating, but addressing, right, the hormones without the gut. And now, in like Mike said, in our industry, the gut's always at the top of the list. But I think this is something that a lot of let's say, the guys that are on the fence, right? Integrative healthcare practitioners do a little bit of allopathic, do a little bit of functional medicine. This is something they need to see, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is really great stuff, Joe. So as Joe mentioned, as estrogen is utilized, it becomes conjugated, then delivered to the bile for excretion in the gut. It's critical for this to take place. If it doesn't, again, it gets into that tissue, can result in estrogen dominance, right? So we're trying to clear that out. Basically, everything we just talked about.
And Mike, how many times have we, heard throughout the years with bowel movements in general, right? And how infrequent they are, especially with women. And then as they go through some of these hormonal changes, that becomes worse, right? So if you're not having them regularly to begin with, there's a good chance that dysbiosis is in there and the bacteria is causing the estrogen not to be conjugated.
Joe, that reminds me of a story. I was doing a talk at one time, and we're talking about detoxification, and this woman raises her hand, and she's like, and we're talking about constipation and so forth, and how you should have at least one bowel movement a day.
That's right.
At least one, if not more than one.
Dr. Weiner used to say, if you ate 3 meals, you should have 3 movements. If you ate 2 meals, you should have 2 movements.
Right. But let's just start with one, Joe.
Sure.
Because most aren't even doing that, right?
Okay, you're right.
And this lady raises her hand, and she's like, well, my mom had constipation, and when I talked to my doctor, he said it was genetic. I'm like, I've never heard of genetic constipation before. Right? And I said, let me ask you a question. Do you have an animal, a dog, cat? And a lot of people raise their hand. Yes. If your dog didn't have a bowel movement in 2 or 3 days, what would you do?
Yes.
You bring him to the emergency room.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Why is it okay for you, but not your dog? Right? And they're like, oh, I never thought about it like that. Right? But that's the importance of that clearance. And if there's definitely, that's just one sign of many other things going on in your GI tract.
Oh,
right.
There's so the certainty of there being a dysbiosis.
But genetic, Joe. Everything's genetics.
Genetic constipation. How about that? That's a good one.
Yep. So again, just want to pass that on since we're discussing this today.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Good. Yep. Okay. So the estrobolome.
Yes.
Yeah. Now this is basically the state of bacteria in the gut and how it affects estrogen conjugation. That's what we're talking about here. If you're having hormonal imbalances, let's take it back to the cause, and the cause is going to be bacteria in the gut. Right?
Right. So it's a new term.
Yeah.
It's a new terminology out there that a lot of people haven't heard. Doctors haven't heard of it. So this is really advanced stuff. But yeah, that's the basic, simple premise.
And how do you address it? Cleansing. Right. Exactly. We have Power Cleanse, Estro Cleanse, probiotics. I mean, we're going to go through some of those, but this is it. It doesn't require surgery or drugs. It just requires a good, productive plan.
Yeah. And because it's also a bacteria, IgG would also help,
That's right?
Because that works on all bacteria.
So he put this slide in twice because it's so important.
Yeah.
And again, go down to the bottom, folks. If the estrogen is not excreted due to high levels of bacteria in the gut, it's reabsorbed. Reabsorbed, deconjugated estrogens are toxic.
Right.
That's what we're trying to explain here today.
Yeah. So we laid it out. We tried to explain it as simply as we can, but hopefully that makes sense for everybody.
So what happens when you have deconjugated estrogens reabsorbed into the body? Well, here's what you're going to find, right?
Yeah. All the classic signs and symptoms, PMS, or any type of hormonal bounce, hot flashes, night sweats, right? Can lead to obesity. So many times we talk to people as they go through female, especially stages of life there, right? They gain weight. This is one reason why. Metabolic syndrome, so affects blood pressure and heart, as well as cholesterol, breast and prostate cancer. Endometriosis, which is a serious
right, because we're not just talking about women.
No, men too. Right? Men too. Endometriosis, right? Polycystic ovary syndrome. These are all serious estrogen dominant problems. Infertility. And it just seems in a lot more doctors are seeing patients who are trying to get pregnant, really struggling with that. And again, we can help. But we got to look at the gut. We got to look at the gut first, right? Mood, heart, everything.
All starts in the gut. Some of these are mild, some are extreme, but the thing is they're connected, and one's going to lead to another. Metabolic syndrome's been around, that term, for a long time.
Right.
Sometimes they call it Syndrome X.
Right.
Right. And metabolic syndrome. And I want to go back to Mike to a little bit ago when you said that the doctor says, "Oh, it's genetic." Genetic. When they say that, when they don't have an answer, right?
It's kind of like idiosyncratic.
Yeah, idiopathic.
Idiopathic.
Idiopathic. And that term is an actual medical term that means we don't know where it comes from.
Right. We don't know.
We don't know.
But it just sounds good.
Yeah, it just sounds good.
Or to me, it sounds like the idiots. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It comes from idiot. Yeah, right.
Right.
So here's something that we see a lot, right?
The PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. But look at that stat right there, Joe. 3 million new cases every year.
Right.
Right. For infertility, heavy bleeding, cramps, right? Very common in younger females. Affects birth control, affects it.
Now that's interesting stat right there, Mike, because talk about hormonal imbalances. Most people would think, later stage of life.
Right.
But here's a hormonal imbalance that's causing a very destructive process in the body, PCOS, in 18 to 35-year-olds. Right. So it's not just elderly when it comes to hormonal imbalance.
Right. So classic signs, course abnormal hair growth and acne, right?
Yeah.
So
and look at birth control. That's
and
one of the big causes of
right.
hormonal imbalance.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're setting themselves up for a lifelong of problems.
That's
you don't
right.
get this corrected.
You know, and one thing about birth control, you know, that's a lot of times, you know, when we do consultations and we ask someone, a woman, if she's on any meds, she'll say no. And we say, are you on birth control? Well, yeah. Well, that's a med.
Exactly.
That's a med.
Yes.
Okay. And not only is it a med, but it is going to disrupt the microbiome in and of itself.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to destroy probiotic activity in the body.
Yeah. And that also reminds me, Joe, I used to, at these events, I used to ask people, how are you? How are you doing? How you doing? And they're like, oh, good. So I changed the question to, are you drug-free good? And you're like, oh, no. I'm on 5 drugs. I'm on 10, right?
Yes.
So to me, that's not good, right? So it's a whole different mindset when you ask that question.
You know, isn't that one of Dr. Sherry Tenpenny's quotes? How does that go? Let's see. He said, lack of symptoms is not a sign of health. If you're on dry, I forget exactly how she quoted it, but we're going to have to look that up.
Yeah.
Symptom free is not a sign of health. Pharmaceutically induced symptom free is not a sign of health.
Yes.
There you go.
Exactly. Good one.
So again, gut hormone connection. I mean, this is, you know, a little bit more than most people need, but look what's right in the middle there, the vagus nerve.
Yep.
You know, and it's only been in the recent 5 years that we've been talking about the vagus nerve, you know, and that's when the brain gut connection really started to come into play, in the connection between the brain and the gut. So the microbiome all over.
Yeah. And the other thing too, Joe, is that there's a lot of new research with concussions in the brain.
That's right.
And this is why with the gut. And this is why a lot of people who have concussions within the first 3 days, they feel, you know, they're vomiting, nauseous, can't eat anything, right? Because that concussion actually triggers leaky gut. And so Dr. Tracy always says leaky gut equals leaky brain.
That's right.
Leaky brain equals leaky gut.
And, you know, this is a great slide to show you that it's not just about your stomach. Okay. Every organ involved, the digestive system involves the liver. It involves the pancreas. It involves the spleen and the stomach and the intestines. So people, you know, when you think about gut health, it's not just your stomach, right? We have to address everything. The entire,
everything, the big picture. So obviously we want to be as healthy as possible. We want to produce enough enzymes to break down the food, right? Is that estrogen imbalanced at all, right? And then again, the whole idea with this is looking at it from a complete program.
Yep. Well, we have a little healthy gut here. Yeah. Okay.
It's what like happens? A rainbow, Joe.
Yes, there it is. Rainbow. Healthy microbiome, estrobolome. So there's an axis. There's a new axis. I got a new one to add to my list. But look at the positive effects. Okay. Decrease in oxidative stress, decrease in intestinal inflammation, intestinal permeability, increase in microbial diversity. All of these things are positive end effects with a healthy microbiome.
Right. Even supports kidneys, supports liver, everything. So it's all connected, folks.
And, you know, that really should be the first question when a person goes in to see a doctor. It should be the first question they should ask is about their gut, right? No matter what the other symptoms are, it's all got to go back to that.
And it is one of the main reasons why they do seek out doctors.
That's right.
Is all different aspects of GI health, whether it's acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion, whether it's Crohn's, colitis, irritable bowel. It's and obviously
and here's a nice summary right here, right?
Yeah,
Mike?
right.
You got an imbalance of gut bacteria, then if the estrogen will revert back, be reabsorbed into the bloodstream. That's what we're talking about when we say the gut hormone connection. This is the end result. If you take away nothing else, this is the key. The bacteria in the gut can cause estrogen to be reabsorbed back into the bloodstream.
Yeah, and I just think so many people are missing this piece.
Yeah.
right? They're doing a lot of other good things, but they're not looking at the GI
Mhm.
at all. And maybe they don't have any GI symptoms, so they're not thinking
Right.
about it.
Right.
But if somebody is trying any of our formulas or anything that they're doing and it's not working, what's the definition of sanity?
Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a
Yeah.
different result.
They're missing something, and this, I think, is it.
That's
So
for sure.
let's take a look at that.
All right, why don't we take a look at some of our well, actually we don't have the slides up on the actual products, but let's talk about let's talk about these, for example, Mike.
Okay.
Estra Cleanse and Glucolyze. Even though the slides aren't up there, let's talk about these because this is at the key cornerstone of hormonal health as well.
Yeah. So with the Estra Cleanse, we're using a couple critical components, nutrients that have been used since the 80s, right? So the first one is called indole-3-carbinol, right? And indole-3-carbinol comes from your cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. And when you chew on those and you keep chewing and chewing and chewing, it produces this metabolite. And what this does is it helps rebalance those estrogen issues, right? From that standpoint.
Right.
And so that's been around since the 80s. And in the 90s came out DIM.
Yes.
And if you continue to keep chewing on that broccoli, it will produce DIM.
Right.
So we're using that as well. So it's an additional support. And in the last 10 years, decade, came out caldigluconate,
yes,
which is specifically coming from your broccoli family, but it's another metabolite that helps rebalance estrogen.
Right.
So we're not using not one, not two, but three.
That's right.
And it's the only one I've seen on the market.
That's right.
That has all three, plus some anti-inflammatories, plus some antioxidants because of the connection there. So again, it's always our starting place for any type of hormonal imbalance.
You know, and the name of the formula is Estro Cleanse. Now that, and sometimes they'll take that to mean it's just for women. It's not. It's for men and women. Everybody needs that balance. The other thing I love about Estro Cleanse, Mike, is the other nutrients in there. And I call it that second trifecta of nutrients. And that is resveratrol, curcumin, and green tea. Now, why do three of those together? Because science and studies have shown that those three nutrients all have a beneficial effect on activating a specific gene in the body. And this gene is responsible for prolonging the life of your cells, especially in times of stress like caloric restriction. So in times of famine or fasting, then your body goes into a preservation mode. And in order for that to happen, you need to activate that gene. It's also what helps extend the life of the telomeres, which are the caps of our cells, and protect our DNA. So, you know, most of the time, people say, well, wow, that's interesting that that's in there. Well, when we're talking about hormonal health, we're talking about age management.
Yes.
Right. So why not approach it from a additional standpoint and give this, you know, an added boost?
Right. So you are referring anti-aging.
That's right.
Key critical anti-aging nutrients. And so that's the key.
That's right. And you know, we you know, they forced us a few years back to start calling it age management, not anti-aging, because you can't stop aging.
Nope.
Right. And as we always say, or as I always say, everybody has to age, but you don't have to get old.
That's right. Right.
Then we have Glucolyze. How does that fit in?
So Glucolyze is the blood sugar component. So if you have any type of blood sugar, especially hyper, right? So high blood sugar levels.
And how does that fit in with hormones?
Well, again, we talked about the connection with the imbalance, right? And then again, if it affects the blood sugar, affects the cortisol, affects the liver, affects the GI,
insulin,
and then the insulin, right? So again, the connection on all that. So Glucolyze is a fantastic formula to help rebalance blood sugar. It's all critical nutrients that stabilize blood sugar. And the other thing too, Joe, when people, if people are already on medication route, you know, can they take these?
Yes,
absolutely. Right. Yes. It will help complement what the medication isn't doing. Obviously, we're trying to catch you before you go that route, but it is completely safe.
Yeah.
And as long as you're checking your blood sugar, and hopefully you need less and less your medications, but always work with your PCP, of course, prescribing physician if you're on that route, going that route.
So, everybody talks. I mean, thyroid issues is one of those things where they've really, just dissected this organ or this gland out of the body, and they address it without addressing, as we said earlier, the entire endocrine system. But it is important, and we know that we can affect the health of the thyroid nutritionally without drugs. And I think that's one of the things that people get wrong most about the thyroid is that it's essential for life, and it has nutrients that it needs to work properly.
That's right. So we see this, so many people on thyroid medication, and this area of the country, Joe, is known as the goiter belt. And I don't know if you ever heard that saying before, right?
Yes,
Do you know how that story all came about?
No, tell us.
It is the theory is that during the Ice Age, that a huge iceberg went through this area of the country, sort of like the Michigan, basically the Appalachian Mountains. And it's so from Michigan all the way through Western Pennsylvania down to the Kentucky area, right, where the Appalachians are. It stripped away key minerals
like iodine.
Yes, exactly. And so we have the highest levels of goiter in the entire country right here in Western Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Michigan. But that is the theory there. So
I'll tell you what, Mike, that's the first time I ever heard you go back to the Ice Age.
Yep. Sometimes we got to go back before we can move forward.
Oh, my God. Okay, makes sense, because what is the number one nutrient for the thyroid? Iodine. And, Mike, I think a lot of people still don't know that the 4 in T4 and the 3 in T3 stand for how many iodine molecules are attached to the thyroid hormone.
Yes.
So if it's not important, then why in the world are they there?
And the other challenge, Joe, is that the medications typically do not do the full conversion.
Right.
So you need iodine, selenium, and tyrosine are the critical ones to help with this conversion. Right. So even if you're on a medication, and again, I always talk to a female. I said, how did you feel when you first started? Oh, I felt great. I have energy, this and that. I'm like, how long did that last? 3 to 6 months. And then what happened? I had to go back. And what happened? They increased my dose.
They increased the dose,
right? Because your body adapts, and you're not getting the conversion. So when you're using our formulas like the Iodine Plus, like the Thyroid Complete, it's helping with that conversion and bringing you back to when you first started.
Right.
So again, I always use that example with people just to get that.
Well, and that's the thing with any type of drug therapy. Okay, your body's going to eventually depend on the drug and shut down the system from functioning. With nutritional therapies, it enhances the body's functionality. And with drugs, you need more over time. With nutrition, you may need less over time. So there's a big difference.
That's right.
Okay, so sleep. Does sleep affect hormone health?
Absolutely. Right?
Big time, right?
Yep. The cortisol connection right there. Right? And the adrenals, we just said already. We do have a fantastic sleep formula called Sleep Time. Again, the challenging is just trying experimentation. If we start with 1 or 2, if you don't get a full night's sleep, and we mean getting to sleep and staying asleep, then we need to increase it. Some people do really well with 1. Some people need 2. Some people need 3.
Right.
But most people who try it and experiment do fantastic.
And, along with iodine, let's talk about Thyroid Complete for a second. Right?
For sure.
Because you have to address, and again, this formula was designed to address the whole endocrine system, right? Because it has glandulars for the pituitary, the hypothalamus, and the thyroid. It has ashwagandha to stimulate the adrenals.
Yep. Patent and trademark form of it.
Yep.
Sensoril.
As well as some all-natural iodine from kelp.
Yes.
So, it's a great overall endocrine formula.
Right. So it covers the whole axis, as you said, the whole fat axis. The other point, Joe, is that not all thyroid glandulars are the same, or the sourcing of it. We actually do our due diligence, and we're getting them from New Zealand, which are the cleanest sources in the world as well. So a lot of the glandular supplements on the market, even from professional ones, are coming from USDA cows, United States, that are not, shall we say, as clean. So That's a big thing too. So I always ask that question whenever I'm talking to somebody here and they're using something else. I'm like, you know, the source of those glandulars? Oh no.
Yeah.
All right. So
yes,
we
you
always
need to know the
that's
source.
always
I
important.
think we should just wrap this up, Mike, with
Yep.
this slide again. This is the most important slide of this presentation, folks. And that is, if your gut is in dysbiosis, and that means an overgrowth of bad bacteria, then estrogens will be reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. And you will have an imbalance that will not be affected by any type of HRT, hormone replacement therapy. You'll be actually going against it. So address the gut first in order to keep hormonal balance intact.
Absolutely, Joe. Yep, exactly. You said it. So GI Complete, IgG, should be the primary starting place. And then these other formulas we talked about will work even better, faster as the secondary instead of doing it the opposite. So that's the whole point with this, folks. Again, if you are, having these issues, come on down.
Yep.
Make an appointment, right, with Jeff Nisnik or with Dr. Phil. Right, we can take a look at blood work,
Yes.
all these things. We've helped thousands of people through the years. Dr. Weiner was one of the pioneers talking about thyroid and iodine.
Oh, yes,
way
absolutely.
before anybody else.
The whole reason we have Iodine Plus,
yes,
is because of Dr. Weiner.
that's right.
And you've had other iodines out there, but they didn't have the cofactors to help with absorption.
Right. Nope.
So number one reason. Okay, folks, that's it for today. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Joe.
A lot of fun. And this was great information brought to us again by, of course, Dr. Len Bransowitz, the gut guy. And he will be here on Friday in our roundtable discussion. So looking forward to that.
Beautiful.
All right, up next we have, who do we have? Oh, okay. We've got up next, we have, Billy Nicole Howie. Yeah, all right. Our resident trainer extraordinaire. She'll be doing a great presentation, folks. So stay tuned for that. Coming up, 11 o'clock hour. And we're here all week at the 100th Weiner Wellness Week.
You want to sound off, Joe? Sound it off.
Absolutely. We are in the season of gratitude, if there ever was one. But you keep that attitude of gratitude all year round, and we promise you, you will live long and prosper.